YouTube? Welcome back to UniXTCG, and we are here for the next installment of Why or Why Not You Should Play X Deck for the Treasure Cups, and today's subject is Dofy. Right before we get into that, I just want to say a few things actually. One, thank you guys for the support. We are growing exponentially. 4,000 is closer than it is farther away, and that is crazy growth. So if you guys like this sort of One Piece content, make sure you get on there and like the video, click that subscribe button, and then hit the notification button as well for more content. You know, just comment, help the video trend. They already are, but every little bit counts, and I appreciate that. We're gonna be coming out with way more One Piece content. We're gonna be coming out with, of course, Dragon Ball Super content. We're gonna be coming out with Battle Spirits content very, very soon. So we're rolling into all of that. Next, want to remind you guys, I will be giving away next month 2 Film Red Purple starter decks. So be ready to get on the raffle for that. We're pretty much gonna have the same rules as last time, but hey, I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance, and we're going to be going off on this. And I'll be emailing the people and sending out shipping for the first giveaway. It's been really hectic. So yeah, if your emails have already gotten in time, I got you. Next, the last thing I wanted to say is that I am, since people are asking me in the DMs, I keep forgetting to put this up. I do coach for this game. When you go into the coaching sessions, we can really do anything. If you want to shore up a matchup, I can build that deck. We can do it on the sim, we can do it on Untap, we can do it webcam, and I can help you with that. If you need help with philosophies, we can run through games open-handed. We can talk it through step by step. Anything you might want to know about the game, we can work on together. The rate is currently 18 an hour. That's what's been working for everybody, and yeah, like that is what it is. So let's jump into the Dofy talk, and yeah. Let's have some fun here. And just to say, if you want to reach out to me about any of these things, questions you may have, coaching, anything, you can just reach out to me about my business email that will be down in the description, or you can actually come to the Discord, and the link's in the description as well. So, with that being said, the leader we're going to talk about today, Don Quixote Doflamingo. He's a blue leader, and do not let all this text kind of fool you. He's actually pretty straightforward. So, he's a Don X2 leader, so you need to put 2 Don in him for this effect to activate. When attacking, rest a Don. So pretty much 3 total. 2 under him, 1 rester for the effect. And you're going to reveal the top card of your deck to both yourself and your opponent. And if it is a 7 Warlords of the Sea in 4 cost or less, you are going to bring it into the field rested. Now, this is actually a pretty cool thing. Right off the rip, we're going to talk about how Doflamingo as a whole, all the leaders for the now at least start off with 5,000 power. Putting a Don 2 under him makes him 7k, swinging for the perfect number to check face against a 5k. When you swing, of course, we've talked about that in the Magic Numbers video, you swing on a 5k with 7k, and they need to drop at minimum 3k counter to stop it. It's a very nasty number because even if they have a 2k and a 1k in hand, they are dropping 2 cards out of their hand to stop that attack, or they're taking it. So this guy is going to have so many free shots at leaders that are going to punish their hand. On top of that, you can check things like Zoro. There's so many things you check with this effect. He is just such a good fisher. Now, past him being a good fisher, what we also have is the ability to play off the top of your deck instead of your hand, which is going to allow Doflamingo to keep quite a healthy hand until you get low enough to start proccing some of the mini effects that blue has to do with low hands. So the thing we're going to start on next is actually talking about why you would want to play blue. So as a color, blue is very interesting because it doesn't have as tight of a focus as red. Red, you know, having rush and high DP. It's more akin to blue and green in its sense of it has a lot of effects. Surprisingly, it has a lot of effects. It has thinning. It has rearranging, it has blockers on blockers, it has a fair amount of beaters, and even has some recursion utility. And we're gonna go through all of those, as well as the ability to disrupt your opponent's field. So we're gonna go through all of those and explain to you why, but blue is a very strong all-arounder. The thing it really can't do is destroy cards. That's the one thing it can't. It's like it switches hard removal for the ability to rearrange and more draw power than essentially any other deck in the game. So we're going to go over to what makes Dofy special, what makes it tick. The first component to Dofy is since you are constantly looking to reveal the top card of your deck, you need to know the top card of your deck. And in many of these cases, you're getting to know more than the top card of your deck. You're getting to know the top 5 or the top 3. And so we have 3 cards that help you do that. First and most importantly is Perona. Perona is a 1-drop. She gets played. You look at the top 5 cards of your deck, and then you will rearrange them, put them back. You don't draw anything. You don't plus, but you do rearrange the setup for your Doflamingo plays and more. The second is the Doflamingo blocker himself. 3 cost. He's a blocker, 4K stats. He can be destroyed by quite a lot, but he can't be destroyed by Robin, and that's a very, very important factor against red. But this guy's going to come down, and he's going to be able to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, rearrange them. He is also a 7 Warlords of the Sea, so you can flip him off your leader's effect, although he is a blocker that comes into play. So if they choose to swing on him with their leader for 6K, you pretty much just lose the blocker. But if you need to look at the top 5, this is, an okay target, but you generally want to play this from hand, not from the top of your deck. Lastly, you have Spada. And Desert Spada is going to be able to be played for 1. Your leader or character goes up by 2K, and you look at the top 3 cards, rearrange them, and put them down. Now, this is going to be the part where you learn that Doflamingo takes a bit more brain power, and we're going to talk about this towards the end, because this is one of the good parts and bad parts. It takes a little more brain power, because when you rearrange top 5, you're going to be at the beginning of the game stacking them pretty A-B, You're gonna, if you're playing Perona on turn 1, you're going to then stack your cards as the card you want to draw next, the card you want to use with Doffy's effect, the card you want to draw the turn after, the card you want to draw with Doffy's effect, or flip with Doffy's effect, and the card you want to draw right after. I think that was it. Yeah, right? Yeah. Next card turns draw, next turns flip off top, next turns draw, next turns flip off top, next turns draw. Said that kind of weird. So you have that, right? But when you get into some of the cards later, we're going to get into that really heavy later. The Boa Hancocks, the Love Mellows. You will add drawing into your scheme. So late game, you may play a Perona or a Doflamingo blocker and literally go, okay, I played it. We're going to stack the card that I want to flip with Doffy when I swing, the card that I'm going to draw when I swing with Boa, the card that I'm going to draw when I use Love Mellow, the card I'm going to draw for turn, and then the card I'm going to get off of Doffy's effect. See how only 2 of those were Doffy's effect and 3 of those were just sequential draws, depending on what you had on board? That's going to be how that works. And when you do this, you are doing it generally at the beginning of your turn. So the focus has to be there, because what happens when you go, I'm using this card for Doffy's effect, this card I'm drawing off of Boa, this card I'm going to draw off Love of Mellow, this card I'm drawing for turn, and this card I'm going to use off Doffy's effect. Well, what happens when you use Doffy's effect and you get that card, right? You swing with Boa and then you get that card. And then your opponent does something that you don't actually feel like you need to use Love Mellow for. You then don't use Love Mellow, meaning that instead of drawing this card for Love Mellow, you draw it for turn. And then when you use your Doffy's effect, you would not be at the same amount. The card you stacked for Doffy is here. The card you wanted to draw with Love Mellow after Boa is here. So you're gonna have a dead card there. And sometimes you can still work that out. You can literally have 2 Warlords and know that situation. But just understand that the top 5 searches are going to make it not exactly as flexible as you'd like. So that's a huge part about Doffy, and I know I normally save the pluses and minuses for the end of the video, but essentially that is actually one of the biggest things that you can kind of get into trouble-wise. You have to set up those plays ahead, but when your plans and the events of your turn change, you can really kind of put yourself in a hole. So, next part I want to talk about, we have the thinning, and this comes in the form of 3 main cards. You got Mihawk from the starter deck, very good card. Mihawk, when he swings and he has a Dawn underneath him, he's going to be able to draw 2 and trash 2. This is not optional. If you Dawn him up, you will be activating this effect, so don't get caught lacking. You Dawn him up and you don't want to draw and risk anything in your hand, yeah, you're just going to have to. So be careful with this card. Mostly use him as a 2K, but if you want to, you can flip him off the top. He is a decent swinger at 5K. He can Dawn up to 6K, but even 5K is good. But yeah, he'll be able to swing, draw 2, trash 2. Yes, it's not a plus, but it's going to be hard filter. Get rid of dead cards, draw new ones. The next one of the best cards in the deck, arguably, is Boa Hancock. She's a 4-cost blocker. When she has a Dawn underneath her, she's one of the only cards that works on your turn and your opponent's turn. When she has a Dawn underneath her and she swings or she blocks, if you have 4 or less cards, actually I think it's 5, right? If it's 5 or less cards in your hand, you draw one. This is amazing. She puts in so much work, and she is such a high profile target. When you flip her, you can flip her off the top with Doffy, the leader effect. And on top of that, yeah, like I said, blocking or swinging. Swinging for 6k, blocking for 5k. She will draw a card if your hand is at 5 or less. That's a very easy number to hit mid to late game, and she will definitely help revitalize your hand over time. Beautiful card. Last one here for drawing is Love Mellow. This is going to be a 2 cost. It gives you 2k power, or sorry, 4k power, and then if you have 3 or less cards when this resolves, you're going to draw a card. So if you have 4 cards in hand and you play this, you go down to 3 to play this, and then you're going to draw back up to 4, allowing you to not only get out of an attack, but keep your deck flow going. This is also super bomb. And so using cards like that, you're going to be able to not only arrange at the top of your deck, but you're going to be able to get cards off the top of your deck. There are times where you could play a Perona, search your top 5, and in those cases, like let's say you have a Mihawk on the board, you can literally go, I have 2 dead cards in hand. Perona is going to put 2 cards I want in hand on top. Then I'm going to put the card I want off of Doffy's effect. Then I'm going to put the card I want to draw next turn, and then, you know, so on. And then the way that turn plays out is 2 under, you played 1 for Perona, you put 2 under Doffy, you swing for 7, you tap 1, you play the card you have out here, or sorry, I messed that up. If you're putting the 2 cards you want to draw off of that, then the Doffy effect, you would play 1 for Perona, put 1 under Mihawk, swing with Mihawk, draw 2, trash 2, you got the 2 cards you stacked on top, then you put 2 Dawn under Doffy, swing, that's 1 Dawn to use the effect, you play the free Warlord, and now you still have half your Dawn left over for your defensive step or whatever else you want in the turn. That is the kind of momentum that you can set up with Doffy as a leader. Next, the other part that makes Doflamingo a good deck, blue decks in general, is the amount of field disruption. They can't blow up cards, no. But what they can do is put them back to hand. And when you are not playing a rush deck, that is very detrimental. Cards, yes, can have good come into play effects, but a lot of the times, lots of these cards need to just stick on the board. Your Basils need to stick on board to do damage. Your 8-drop Kid needs to stick on board to do damage. You can't, bounce the 8-drop Kid, but you can bounce the 7-drop. He needs to stay on the board to, be able to block as well as swing. You can set that back. So the cards we have for disrupting board are Teach. Teach is going to be able to bounce a 3-drop or less from either side of the field. Let that be known. Because this guy can bounce your own Peronas, he can bounce your own Laws. I don't know, you really wouldn't want to bounce your Laws, but he can bounce your Perona so you can recycle them. He can bounce your Doflamingo so you can recycle the top 5 effect. Very, very good. But since Doflamingo is an on-attack effect, you can swing with Doflamingo, right? And after swinging with Doflamingo, you can actually play this off the top of your deck if you stacked them, and then target your opponent's Lobby blocker and bounce it. And this all happens before your opponent gets a chance to declare blocker. So there have been some games I have won because my opponent has had 1 blocker, and they've had, 1 blocker, no life, and I've literally just gone, okay, Perona, a Teach, sweet. Put all the Dawn I need to on Doflamingo except the 1 I need to tap. So at this point there is 8 Dawn on Doflamingo. Swing in for 13k, activate his effect, tapping my last Dawn, playing Teach. Teach bounce their 1-drop blocker, and I swing for 13k they can't block because I just got rid of their blocker. Great. So, great stuff. Then, you have Doflamingo. It says return 1 character with the cost of 7 or less to its owner's hand. So this can target yours or your opponent's. Normally you're targeting your opponent's. This is great for moving plenty of things. These fat vanillas that cost up to 7, excellent. Your opponent's 7-drop Kid, excellent. So there's a lot of things you want to get rid of this, but it does go back to hand. And it's also a 7k beater, so we're going to get to that later. Very, very strong stated. And then you have the big dog, Mihawk. Same thing, except one more crucial point. He costs 2 more. He has 2,000 more power, but he's going to bottom deck a 7 or less. And that is powerful because in this game, you bottom deck something, your opponent's generally not getting it back. These are the destruction, or the disruption bosses. Not destruction, but disruption bosses of the deck, followed by Overheat. The 2 cost just event from the OPO1. This is going to not only boost you up by 4k, but you're going to be able to bounce something in active mode with 3 cost or less. But if it gets trashed from your life, or if it gets triggered from your life, you're going to be able to bounce any 4 or less cost card. regardless of position, rested or active. Now, this card is interesting because I don't think it's the best. It's very easy to play around. The fact that it can only touch active things means that you can tap everything you want to, swing in the order of importance, and you can generally play around this guy's effect when it's on board. You know, use your Bonnies first, all these things. But if it gets hit from life, it can actually be pretty good. But mainly, it can sometimes block 2 attacks. You get yourself out of 1 attack and you bounce something that costs 3 or less that hasn't swung yet, like an Okiku or something. But generally, Okiku leads the swings. So it's very hard to do that. Maybe you can catch a Raizo slip in, you know, stuff like that. A Robin for sure. So, yeah, things like that. Now, the next part I want to get into is beaters, because this deck may look like not an aggressive deck, but it's more like an aggressive tempo. Between the leader constantly swinging for, I don't know, 7k over and over again at base, it can go up more if they just want a lot more to it, of course. You're going to be able to get a lot of chip damage, and that's the name of the game. Chip damage until you have Doflamingos, as well as Virgos, as well as like your beaters. Chip damage with your leader, beaters slowly wear your opponent down. And that is what we're going to talk about here. First, you've got this guy, 6k Pacifista, beater for 4. But you're never really going to play him for 4 because he's not a Warlord. But we're going to get to another card that's going to allow you to play this guy successfully, okay? So we're going to put him to the side. Then, after that, you've got Virgo. 5 cost, 7k stat line. This is great because you want to be able to pressure your opponent's characters. This is one of the first things you want to put on board against green because, yes, they can cap it with Okiku, but they have to dawn up to swing into it, and you can easily defend it in this deck. But it's also going to be a card that can better pressure 8-drop Kid. Then, of course, the other beaters, we've already seen them before. Doffy and Mihawk. Honestly, when you're playing against Kid, 8-drop can wall you. But if you curve out into Virgo, followed by Doffy, followed by Mihawk, these 3 are the Knights of the Apocalypse. If these 3 are on the field, you can generally bully an 8-drop Kid off the board very easily. But the question is, are you going to get these 3 on the field before your opponent sets up their unkillable board? That is the main question. Now, in terms of defense, this deck has a lot. We're going to go through all the blockers as soon as I stop dropping cards. And you're going to see that we have, like I said, we have the 1-drop blocker that every deck has. That's Law. Very good. He's also a Warlord, but again, you don't want to put blockers down because they'll be swung immediately. You have Doflamingo, rearing his ugly, weird, arted head again. This art is the weirdest in the game, I'm serious. But he basically is going to come out and, you know, do his thing. He's also a blocker. Now, this is one you haven't seen before. This one is Kuma. 7 Warlords of the Sea, and he is the only blocker that can be safe to play out via Doffy's effect. Because when he comes out and he dies, he can bring out a Pacifista, which is going to be one of 2 cards. So this guy is going to become a blocker, but he's also a 5k body. So he can swing. He can swing and he can block. Very multifaceted card. But when he dies, he's either going to bring out this guy, which is a just monstrous swinger for free, or he's going to bring out this guy, which is another 5k blocker who's also a Pacifista. And the thing about this core is that I'm going to take a little sidebar. When you're playing against a heavy destruction deck like Kaido, these are very crucial because they give you a level of assurance. When your opponent has a 10-drop Kaido and you have one of these out, this blows, and they have to pray that you cannot follow it up with dropping one of these, because that means on a turn that they tapped out, you are adding a 6k or a 5k to your board that can go sideways and generally help finish them off between that and your leader. And then your leader is going to have this effect. A single Perona or Doffy in hand will turn one of these, your leader swing, into half a board full. They don't want that. They don't want that at all. So this adds an extra layer of insurance. The only thing I don't like is that this deck does a lot of rearranging, but this deck has finite draw. The draw generally comes into play later game when you're low on hand, and so sometimes you'll play this and you just won't have these in hand, and then this dies, and then what? You just played a blank card. It could have been any card at that point. So if you want to do this, I feel like you need to max out on Kuma, and you need to play a healthy amount of these, but even that can turn into bricking your deck because these cannot be flipped off the top of your deck with Doffy. Just know that. Next, you have got Boa as another blocker. You have got Spada as a defensive measure. You have got Love Mellow as a defensive measure, and you still have Overheat. So this deck has a whole lot of defensive options. And then lastly, what you have is the utility slot. And the utility slot goes to none other than Gecko Moria. Gecko Moria, when he's played, he can take a Thriller Bark Pirate, which is Perona. I forgot that a long time ago, I'm not forgetting it now. Or any 7 Warlords of the Seas with cost, what, 5 or less? 4 or less. And you put them into your hand. So he's great recursion. He can get back 2Ks in the form of Mihawk. He can get back blockers in the form of Law, in the form of Doffy, in the form of Boa. He can get back your Perona for the search. He does so much. And then the last thing I kind of want to show you, right, is every single target you can bring out, because there's going to be a lot. So I'm going to have a quick cut here. So when it comes to the cards you can bring out, like I said, never want to bring out a blocker unless you absolutely have to, because chances are the blocker's just catching a leader swing for no reason. But I mean, you can bring out Law, like I said, you really want to. Teach for the disruption or the recycling of your own Perona, or the going for game for a block, stopping a small blocker like a killer or something. Doflamingo for the top 5. He's a more suitable target than Law, just because sometimes that top 5 is necessary. Mihawk for the draw. It is what it is. And sometimes even if he gets killed, it doesn't matter because of a card we're going to go into later. Blocker. This is definitely good, this Kuma blocker, because once again, we're going to get into a point where, yes, he's going to be able to cheat out a card for free, but he's not done yet. Boa Hancock, because Boa is that girl, and on top of that, once again, all of these can be brought back by the almighty Gecko Moria. Gecko Moria, like, even if these guys get destroyed, like, there's so many times where you end up stacking a card, one of these Warlords, for, you know, your top card, the card you want to draw for turn, next turn, and then Gecko Moria. Because at the end of the day, even if your opponent tries to get to your card and they waste time or advantage or momentum going after the card you just played, the next turn you can swing on them for 7k again, play Gecko Moria, and get the card they worked so hard to destroy back to your hand for you to be able to play it in active while you gain a 5k. So I suppose your next question would be why to play or why not to play Doffys. So the reason why you play Doffy is because Doffy is an all-rounder. Doffy is able to snowball in board advantage almost just as much as green, except it doesn't have an unbreakable board state. When blue is on a roll, you're going to be constantly cantripping cards, so your defenses are easily cyclable. You're also looking at the top 5 cards, top 3 cards fairly often, so you are often setting up the best possible scenario for you to draw. On top of that, your boss cards not only set your opponent back, but they provide big bodies. So it's a swing in tempo. Your opponent goes back, you step forward. And that's always a good thing to have. Now the thing that isn't necessarily good, also the wall of blockers, I forgot about that, let me rewind. The wall of blockers plus your ability to be very aggressive with your leader effect inherently makes it a very, very fun pick to play. Now the bad parts about it though are, one, like I said before, the focus needs to be there. A single lapse of memory can mess up 2 to 3 turns of plays because of how you did not sequence. Forgetting what you stacked or not using a singular draw that you accounted for in your stacking is going to definitely hurt you. The other thing here is that this deck has about 50-50s across the board except for green. Even green can be a 50-50, but the chances are, because green is you're able to stack your top of your deck, but green is also able to search more than the other deck in the game. So you are really racing to put up more swingers, more big-bodied swingers than your opponent has blockers before they can put up 8-drop kid with blockers attached to it. The only difference is you're playing one of these guys a turn, one Virgo for a turn, one Doffy for a turn, one Mihawk for a turn. When they can play 2 blockers in a turn, followed up with an 8-drop kid, tap 8-drop kid, play a 3rd blocker, and you're like, well, wow, that sucks. And then your game is probably washed from there because they'll start picking away at your life, and you have to wade through their constant blockers, and all it takes is one Bonnie or a stacked hand, and they'll keep playing an extra blocker or 2 a turn as fast as you get rid of them. So this is a massive problem. Besides that, the deck can go toe-to-toe with red, 50-50s, depends on the player, depends on the hands. It can go toe-to-toe with the mirror, of course. It can go toe-to-toe with purple, not only because it can just hurt purple pretty bad, but again, especially if you're using the Kumas, sometimes purple will make its big play to blow up cards and then you just recur cards, or you'll start swinging in with the Kumas for damage to chip cards out of their hand. The moment they finally deal with it, bam, no momentum lost, another big swinger out. So you got to be careful, because I feel like Doffy is almost like Kaido except less strong. And what I mean by that is Doffy has solid matchups across the entire board, just like Kaido does, but unlike Kaido, even when Doffy draws optimal, it's not the best deck in the room. When Kaido draws optimal, it feels like there's almost nothing you can do. Doffy is not that case. So I do think that Doffy is very, very fun. I don't think that Blue is quite there yet right now. It can ball. Any deck in this game right now can probably ball. But I just feel like if you're playing Doffy, you're just going to hit some situations where you did not do anything wrong, but your opponent just had better setups or a better game plan or a more powerful point to do. So let me know what you feel like in the comments. Let me know how you feel about the Doflamingo deck. I will see you guys in the very next why or why not. Maybe I should do a poll, but just let me know, because the only decks left are the dual color ones at this point. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys love the content. Stay tuned for more, and I'll see you next time.